deep and dark green, swift and clear, and as pure as the snows from which it springs. The river has its source in the mountains under Crater Lake. It is a river at its birth, gliding away through the Oregon forest with hurrying momentum, as if eager to begin the long leap down through the Siskiyous. When Zane Grey wrote these words in 1920, he was not only describing a river, but was telling the story of a timeless sculptor, endlessly carving her way through the forest and mountains. She shapes the landscape and the lives of all that she touches. What is this subtle mystery, this tremendous attraction? What is this captivating force they call the Rogue River? The Rogue River, designated as a National Wild and Scenic River, is located in the heart of southern Oregon. With its source in the mountains near Crater Lake, the Rogue River passes through Grants Pass and winds its way through the coastal range en route to the Pacific Ocean. As one of the first 8 rivers to be designated by Congress as a National Wild and Scenic River in 1968, the Rogue draws people from around the world for an opportunity to experience unspoiled wilderness as seen by the early settlers of the 1840s.
They came on horseback, on foot, in wagons, all kinds of modes of traffic to get to this fertile valley.
The settlers arrived. Uninvited, yet undaunted, they made their way into the land of the Takelma and Tututni Indians. There they discovered boundless fish, game, and the fertile fields of this majestic river valley.
Louis Galeese in 1851 discovered gold on what is now called Galeese Creek. He tried to keep it a secret from everyone, but just a matter of time before the secret was gone. And it brought in all kinds of people. And then the conflicts with the Indians began.
The influx of white settlers and gold fever served to heighten the tension between the settlers and the native tribes.
The miners and the settlers called these Indians rogues or scoundrels, which eventually they became known only as the Rogue Indians.
And the river that brought them together became known as the Rogue River. The Hellgate recreational area draws people from all over the world to experience the wide variety of activities the Rogue has to offer. Rafting has become a major attraction. Many call Grants Pass the Whitewater rafting capital of Oregon. There is a full array of commercial outfitters who offer rafting trips as well as guided fishing trips on the wild and scenic Rogue. Anglers have long known about the Rogue's legendary run of steelhead and salmon. One of the most exciting ways to gain access to the wilderness of the Rogue River corridor is Hellgate jetboat excursions. Hellgate jetboat excursions offers a safe, comfortable, and affordable way to see the Hellgate recreation area. providing a wide range of tours, including a 2-hour scenic trip, a 75-mile round-trip whitewater adventure, and a brunch and country dinner excursion. Hellgate is a favorite from children to seniors. The jet boats run from Caveman Bridge in Grants Pass, downstream to Grave Creek, and back. Each jet boat pilot is U.S. Coast Guard licensed and trained to perform CPR and first aid. Since 1959, Hellgate Excursions has maintained a perfect safety record. A first-class interpretation given by the boat pilots educates those on board to the river's incredible wildlife, geology, and history. It's easy to drift off to thoughts of what it must have been like years ago, as the pilot recounts stories of the river's colorful history. A series of battles between the white settlers and the rogue Indians fueled the fires of a growing hatred. A group of miners attempted to punish an Indian encampment for cattle rustling. War broke out in 1855.
One of the major battles in the area was called the Siege of Galice. The Indians had set fire to the town of Galiceburg, and if it hadn't been for a warning from a friendly Indian called Umpqua Joe, many more of the settlers would have lost their lives.
The Indian Wars ended in 1856, with the Indians being sent north to reservations. Umpqua Joe, who had always been a friend to the white settlers, was allowed to remain in the Rogue Valley.
After settling on a quiet piece of riverland and becoming a successful ferry operator, you'd think that all of his troubles in the past and all the bloodshed would have been forgotten and he would have been left alone.
It was not to be. After the war, Umpqua Joe's daughter, Mary, was married to a man of French, Spanish, and Indian descent named Albert Peco. Umpqua Joe valued his St. Bernard dog only second to his rifle.
Shut the dog up, Joe, will ya?
One night, after Umpqua Joe and Albert Peco had been drinking and playing cards,
What you got?
3-3.
Not very good. 3-3.
What? I told you the dog was jinxing me.
It's just a game.
Dog jinx me, Joe. Hey, yeah. Jinx
Not the dog. It's not the dog!
him.
an immediate gunfight over the dead dog took place, and both men were killed. After Joe's death, Mary received the deed to the land where they had lived. The deed was signed by President Cleveland. This land became known as the smallest Indian reservation in the United States. Today, it's one of Grants Pass's most beautiful parks, Indian Mary Park. There are over 100 wild and scenic rivers in the United States. The Rogue River is one of only 4 such rivers to have commercial jet boat sightseeing trips. By offering access to all age groups, skill levels, physically challenged and disabled persons, Hellgate Jet Boat Excursions provides a rare opportunity to share a safe and enjoyable experience. Hellgate jet boats are built by Northwest Pacific Marine in Grants Pass. Not only are these jet boats designed to navigate in 4 or 5 inches of water, but they have been built to reflect Hellgate Excursions' sensitivity to the environment of the Rogue River. Hellgate Excursions' philosophy is that the Rogue is a resource to be respectfully shared with all those who enjoy the many recreational uses. The Rogue is a river with many different faces, pensive and calm in stretches, and furious in others. Legendary stories have been told and retold about this roguish river's ability to catch a person off guard and take them away in her wild rush to the sea. But the tales which swirl through the years about the floods that have ravaged the land and lives are probably the most well known. Mention the years 1903, 1955, or 1964, and the folks in the area are quick to remember the devastation and destruction that tore through the region.
The biggest flood ever recorded on the Rogue was in 1964. It had rained non-stop throughout the region for over 2 weeks, melted the snowpack in the mountains, caused massive flooding on the Rogue. Trees were uprooted, houses were floating down the river. You could go down on the bridge in Grants Pass or at any point on the river and you'd see houses, refrigerators, logs, just massive stuff floating down the river.
The torrent threatened to tear famous Caveman Bridge and Robertson Bridge from the earth and send them downstream. To get an idea of how high the waters were that swept through, take a look at the present-day Robertson Bridge. Imagine the force as the waters of the flood reached just below the bridge's roadway.
Normal summer water flow is around 2,000 to 2,500 cubic feet per second. But during the 64 flood in the Grants Pass area, it was said to have reached 150,000 CFS. By the time it picked up all the other rivers and reached the ocean at Gold Beach, it was said to have been 500,000 CFS.
When the water finally receded and the people saw the destruction that was left in its wake, it became quite clear that we are all just guests here, and our host, as she always has, will have the last word. It's been said you can never see the same river twice. So it is with each journey on Hellgate excursions. Upon entering the Hellgate recreational area, the landscape comes alive with the natural wonder that lured so many over the years. Birds of the region include magnificent great blue herons, graceful ospreys, Canada geese, majestic bald eagles, and even an occasional falcon. Expect to see black-tailed deer, perhaps a beaver in the evening hours, or if you're lucky, a black bear lumbering along. Of all the wildlife in the region, the Rogue is probably best known for its abundance of fish. In the years just after the First World War, the Rogue's fame as a steelhead river had spread across the country. It quickly gained a reputation as one of the great rivers for sports fishermen. Author Zane Grey spent many a morning perched on a chair-shaped boulder fishing the section of the river known as Chair Riffles. In the mid-20s, Grey bought a campsite at Winkle Bar. He eventually built his cabin there. Others were drawn to the Rogue. Jack London, Babe Ruth, Carol Lombard, Jackie Cooper, and David Niven were some of the more famous folks that found paradise along the road. The well-known fisherman Rainbow Gibson bought the Weaskew Inn in 1927 and immediately began booking guests from all over the world, some for weeks and months at a time. The guided tour business on the Rogue was booming. The rush was on, this time for salmon, steelhead, and a chance to experience this legendary river firsthand. Hellgate Jetboat Excursions offers two very special tours that are guaranteed to get rave reviews: the Country Dinner Excursion and the Champagne Brunch Excursion. Both are 36-mile round trips that head downstream through some of the most scenic sights the Rogue has to offer. Crossing through the Jaws into Hellgate Canyon is an impressive scene. Boulders that have defied erosion over the centuries loom hundreds of feet overhead. Because of Hellgate Canyon's dramatic appearance, it has been a favorite place for filmmakers. Gunsmoke and Route 66 were among some of the TV shows that were filmed within the canyon. Perhaps the most famous movie to use Hellgate Canyon was Rooster Cogburn with John Wayne and Katharine Hepburn.
We got you now, Rooster! Keep our heads down.
Most recently, Hellgate Canyon was the location chosen for Universal Pictures' production of The River Wild with Meryl Streep and Kevin Bacon. The water in this part of the canyon has been measured at over 100 feet deep. After experiencing Hellgate Canyon, the jet boats turn around and head upstream to the next stop on the journey. It's a short walk up the hill to the OK Corral, where a delicious meal awaits you. Or if you'd prefer, Hellgate Excursions gladly provides a festive ride up to the restaurant on old-fashioned wagons pulled by antique tractors. Hellgate Excursions' OK Corral is perched on a cool hillside overlooking the river. Dining on the large deck looking out on the water makes for a most enjoyable experience. Don't forget to bring a hearty appetite. The folks at the OK Corral bring to your table plenty of hospitality and an incredible array of country delicacies. The uninvited guests are not a bit shy to come right up and say hello, and they're always a hit with the kids. On the ride back upstream, every trip takes you past sites where battles were fought during the Indian Wars, past Indian burial grounds, along stretches where pioneers crossed on the Applegate Trail, and prepare for the unexpected, such as the whirling 360-degree spin provided by your pilot. It's easy to see why the brunch and dinner excursions are one of the most popular and affordable recreational experiences to be found in Oregon. Little Glenn Woolridge loved the river. From the time Glenn and his river rat friends could first splash around the shore, he was drawn to it. Lying on rocks and studying the water, Glenn noticed how things were constantly changing. Sometimes he'd build little boats out of bark and watch to see how they moved about in the current or swirl around the eddies.
Basically, his childhood was spent learning how this river reacted and how he was going to react to it.
When Glenn was 19, his friend Cal Allen suggested they build a boat and run the road to Gold Beach. Glenn was more than willing to give it a go.
The two boys were well aware of the dangers they faced just from the stories that they'd heard coming from downriver.
Lives had been taken by the rogue in the wild stretches below Hellgate Canyon. And as far as Glenn knew, no one had ever made it all the way to the coast. On September 5th, 1915, Glenn and Cal set out for Gold Beach. It proved to be an incredible challenge. But Glenn Woolridge and Cal Allen were successful and became the first to run the rogue from Grants Pass to Gold Beach.
But the boy that had grown up loving the river somehow knew that his journey was just beginning.
Woolridge went on to be called the Dean of Whitewater Boatmen, Whitewater Cowboy, and in his later years, the Old Man of the Rogue. Embodying the spirit of the river he so loved, Glenn Woolridge contained the energy and magnetism of the rogue. The river had shaped his character, and Glenn did some shaping of his own.
There were many spots down through the canyon that were inaccessible. You had to pole around them or portage around them. So he and his buddies would float sacks of dynamite down around the edges of these boulders and these obstructions and blow them out and make the passages more accessible to the rest of us. When Glenn started offering guided tours in the 20s, it was only natural that his enthusiasm would rub off.
Rogue River drift trips became a very successful business. The dudes, as he called them, came from all over the world to see this remarkable river and the man who had come to know her so well. Among them, Zane Grey, Ginger Rogers, Clark Gable, and President Herbert Hoover, to name a few. And what brought so many to the Rogue River in the past continues to draw thousands each year. Boats and equipment used today to challenge the whitewater of the Rogue may have improved dramatically since Glenn Woolridge's time, but the thrill of the experience hasn't changed a bit. That's why Hellgate Excursions Whitewater Adventure is one of the most popular recreational experiences the river has to offer. The 75-mile round trip takes between 5 and 5.5 hours and is filled with a thrilling yet safe and easy way to see the rapids downstream. The tour passes through the towering cliffs of Hellgate Canyon en route to the wilder section of the Hellgate recreational area. In the comfort and safety of your all-aluminum jet boat, skim over the whitewater and riffles with ease on your way to Grave Creek. Specifically designed to meet the challenge of the shallow waters, Hellgate jet boats are more than adequately prepared with highly efficient engines, which propel you along as they pump up to 90 gallons of water per second. Downstream are some points of interest, such as famous Indian Mary Park, the location of the home deeded to Umpqua Joe's daughter. The Chair at Scenic Chair Riffle, a favorite fishing spot of Zane Grey's. And Woolridge Riffle, named after the legendary whitewater cowboy himself. Every bend of the river, there's wondrous tales to be told of the life and times of people in the past. At Grave Creek, the jet boat pauses to give those on board a glimpse of the lower section of the Rogue. This section, managed by the Bureau of Land Management, is restricted to non-motorized watercraft and is accessible by permit only. The Rainy Falls and Rogue River trails begin here at this section of the river. On the ride back upstream, there's a second chance to enjoy the Whitewater, which ranges from Class 1 to Class 3 rapids. Whitewater is classified from 1 to 6, with 6 being the most turbulent. On the return trip, tours stop at the Galice Store and Resort. The restaurant here has a large deck nestled in the trees with a great view of the Rogue. With the incredible wildlife, the natural beauty, and the Rogue's rich heritage, there's nothing like Hellgate Jetboat Excursions' Whitewater Adventure. The river tumbles off the mountain in mellow, thundering music. Racing between its timbered banks, down the miles to the sheltered valley. Twisting through Grant's Pass, it chafes and fights its way, rushing over the rocks until, finally, it enters the canyoned wilderness of the Coast Range. Zane Grey's words, as written in his cabin at Winkle Bar, remain a timeless description of the endless force known as the Rogue. But can she ever be fully described? Alluring, dynamic, beautiful, yet fearsome, the Rogue pushes ever onward on her path with purpose and power. And we in awe watch her at work, drawn to her as she is drawn to the sea. Mysteriously mesmerizing, this river is like no other. Her past unique, her present inspiring, and her future unfolding like a never-ending story to be told again and again for all who wish to know it. She is the timeless, tireless sculptor, the mysterious force, the incredible attraction we call the Rogue.